Why, hello, and welcome to Connecticut Parent Perspective. I'm Alice, the parent of three wonderful children who have gone through the public school system right here in Connecticut. I believe there were two perspectives as they went through their education experience. The teacher and the administration's perspective was very focused on their development, and I appreciate that. The parent's perspective, on the other hand, is a little bit more emotional and often uninformed. When I was enrolling my students in preschool, which is where their education began, I used the registration dates that were set up as January 1 through December 1 as a guideline to which class that they should be enrolled in. And it worked well with my first child who was born in June. But when my second child, who was born in December, came through the system, well, it seemed a little bit more rushed. And I wondered why that was. Well, in June of 2023, our Connecticut legislature passed a new law moving the registration dates from January 1 to September 1. And there is a reason behind it. It just wasn't an arbitrary thing. Believe it or not, Connecticut is one of the last states in our nation to have such a late registration. And I'd like to talk to you about it today because it's near and dear to my heart, and I can share with you some of the experiences that I saw between how a calendar year really affects the way that they are able to perform in that kindergarten class. Come sit with me. Approximately 11,500 students from across the state of Connecticut will be affected by this new law, according to the Connecticut Post. And that's a lot of students, and I'm sure that number will change given the number of families that move in and out of Connecticut. Here's the query. What happens to those students that are no longer old enough to register for kindergarten? Well, most towns will be creating a class called pre-kindergarten that's in between the preschool and the kindergarten. What it's going to do is put your child in the class that's behind the ones that they've started to progress with. Now, I know that would have bothered my daughter a lot had she needed that extra year. In fact, she was recommended for a pre-first program strictly on one small detail. There's a muscle in the eye that doesn't develop until the end of their 5th year of life. It affects reading from left to right. Now, because my daughter in kindergarten had not yet reached the 5th year, the end of her 5th year, it hadn't had a chance to develop. My mother had a saying, when the apple is ripe, it will fall from the tree. And that's pretty much how their milestones really happened when they were growing. You couldn't rush that change from rolling over to sitting up to crawling. It had to happen as the child grew and got stronger, and as much as you can exercise those muscles. This extra year of pre-kindergarten gives the child a chance to exercise the muscle that has to do with their handwriting. I could notice my daughter's handwriting from across the room. It was just a little bit different from the rest of the class. And by the end of the kindergarten year now, they're writing full sentences on a piece of paper. And there's a whole process. There's actually 8 stages to write this sentence. They start out with just scribble writing, and then sometimes they'll just write random consonants. And then the consonants tend to take on the effect of the subject that they're thinking about. And they start putting spaces in. They start adding vowels. And it looks more and more like the words are developing. They may not be spelled the way they're supposed to be spelled that we know, but it's because they're sounding them out in their head, and you're able to understand and relate to what they're trying to say. And they'll draw a picture to illustrate as well. And you can see just in the drawings, the portraits that they draw of themselves, how their perspectives change. And for a parent, that's so exciting. For an educator, that's a real guide to whether or not they're ready to move on to first grade from kindergarten. So it's important to have that extra time, develop those motor skills. Those physiological differences are more than you realize. Those parents that are going to be enrolling their children in preschool and beginning this education journey, your kindergarten registration dates are going to reflect in the preschool registration dates. So you'll be better prepared. But those that have already begun the process and already in that class, it's better to have that extra year to develop. I know it causes daycare issues. However, this isn't about the daycare issue. This is more about how well adjusted they are to perform well. We want to give them that advantage. And I think that the question of the new registration dates, I believe that it has to do with our education system and our administration trying to equal the playing fields. Now, I've asked our local superintendent, Joe Kobza, and also a kindergarten teacher, Megan Garrity, for some input on this topic. And I think their responses really do matter a lot because we have our child's best interests at heart, as does the education system. Mr. Kobza would say that ultimately the parent does know the child best. Truth. With the school's recommendations and assessments, we can aid this process. The school's curriculum seems to be advancing at a faster pace now. So the extra time, I believe, is recommended. We need to make that choice. We need to really listen to and attend all these conferences. It was in grades 1 through 3, in my observations, that the motor skill issues were at its peak. But as things are progressing faster now, some of that first grade work is happening in kindergarten. I noticed that there were some anxieties in grades 1 and 2 that were built up as well. Probably because she was rushing to do the work and small irritations became quite exaggerated. That can be lasting, though. You know, we want to give them that advantage and feel comfortable. But I'm going to leave you with this quote. Malcolm X said it best. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Thank you for watching, and please enjoy these interviews. The time that they took to answer a few of my questions is just pivotal in this issue. Thank you. Mr. Kobza, thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. When you heard from the state of Connecticut on the new law, what preparations did you need to make in order to comply with the new legislation?
That's a great question, and I think the first thing that we all need to understand is that the research behind the legislation is pretty solid. It was really the sudden implementation that created most of the issues for Monroe and just about every other district in Connecticut. I think a phased-in approach to this would have been a lot more sensible, something where in the first year, we started with students whose birthdays were cut off on December 1st, and the second year, November 1st, until 4 years out when we got to a September 1st birth date. That would have been a much more manageable transition for districts to deal with. But the state made, their statute reads as it reads, and with that being said, we had to deal with the new state law. The tricky thing was the session ends in June, so we had very little time to prepare for, the shift that had to go into effect for the following year. the first thing we did was we put together a team to discuss how we were going to implement the new legislation. That team consisted of myself, my assistant superintendent, both my director and assistant director of student support services, the director of instruction, all of the elementary school principals, and our resident guru, Michaela Kodos. I have to give her a huge shout out for all the work that she did. Michaela is the preschool school psychologist, and she really took the initiative in this major change for us. I can't thank her enough for all the work she did to get us to the place that we are today. So we got that team in place first. And the first thing we had to do was decide on a screener, what was going to be that measurement that we were going to use to help us make these assessments for children born between September 1st and January 1st to put them on the path for kindergarten readiness. And the assessment that we decided on was a screener called the Bracken School Readiness Screener. And really that measured both pre-academic skills as well as social and emotional awareness for kids. Once we had the screener in place, and we had to develop our team of screeners. And that consisted of, once again, Michaela, our 5 preschool teachers, and then our related service staff in the preschool, our speech pathologist, our OT, and our PT. Once that team was in place, we really had to do a significant messaging campaign. We got the message out in a number of ways, and that was in the months of December and January. We used our own messaging system at school to get message out to our school community through School Messenger. We sent letters out to all of the different preschools in town. We put stuff on our website. We have a really good relationship with our online newspaper, the Monroe Sun. They ran a special article for us as well, just trying to explain the new change in legislation and the new process that we were going to be taking in the Monroe Public Schools. Because we were addressing 3 different schools, we have kindergarten at Fawn Hollow Elementary, Monroe Elementary, and Stepney Elementary, we asked parents to centralize their communications, and all communication went to Office Administrative Assistant Terry Stellato at Central Office. Another person, I can't thank Terry enough for all the work that she did to help coordinate the screeners between the families and the preschool staff. For the most part, all the screenings were done on Wednesdays during the month of March by our preschool staff. You know, we always said in Monroe that the decision to enroll a child in kindergarten would be left up to the families. Our job was to get them the information to make an informed decision. But we did use the screeners to discuss their children's skill set in a number of different areas compared to a typical peer entering kindergarten. Like I said, when it came time for the decision was left up to the parents. However, we did make it clear during the process that the stance of the district would not be to retain kids after a year of kindergarten. We wanted parents to make informed decisions that would be best for their children, not for next year, but for the next 13 years. So in the end, we ended up screening approximately 50 children. Of that 50, the large majority of families decided to send their children to kindergarten for this upcoming school year. We did have a handful, approximately 5 families that decided that based on the screenings and the information from the preschool staff, that they would have their child participate in an additional year of preschool. I'd say we have about, like I said, I think we have 5 families that'll be starting their kids in the 25-26 school year, not this school year. So their kids will be a little bit on the older end of this. You know, we've been pretty fortunate that we didn't necessarily have to hire new teachers as a result of this legislation, but there have been significant enrollment and space challenges that this has exacerbated, primarily in our preschool program, to the point where we had to switch our preschool program, even last year, to an AM/PM program to accommodate all of the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and now several 5-year-olds who will be 5 between that September 1st and January 1st period. But once again, our goal in the Monroe Public Schools was always to give parents the best information that we could give them to help them make an informed decision to have their kids start kindergarten when they thought it was best for their child.
Mrs. Garrity, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time today. Please explain the physiological differences that exist in your classroom and how the new registration dates will change this.
Thank you so much for the invitation to comment about this topic. I've enjoyed working with students in full day, half day, and extended day kindergarten programs in public and private schools in Connecticut for more than 20 years. I have observed changes in curriculum, assessments, and the needs of my students over this time. Each school year, kindergarten students enter my classroom with a range of physical, social, and cognitive abilities. On the first day of kindergarten, I am tasked to care for and educate 20 students. Before the implementation of the new kindergarten eligibility law, my classroom included a mix of 4-, 5-, and 6-year-old students on the first day of school. Every kindergartner requires some level of support on the first day of school because everything is new to everyone. However, within the first few weeks of school, most students gain independence and are able to unpack their backpacks and open and close food containers. Like other educators, caregivers, and parents, I've consulted with a resource called Yardsticks: Children in the Classroom by Chip Wood. This book is a comprehensive guide that helps educators better understand students' social and academic behavior through a developmental lens. Using the framework by Chip Wood, we can look closely at physical characteristics among 4-, 5-, and 6-year-olds that are commonly seen in a typical Connecticut kindergarten class up until the start of the 24-25 school year. While 4-year-olds are often clumsy, spill things, and collide with others, 5-year-olds exhibit control when running and jumping. 6-year-olds like a lot of physical activity and learn best through field trips and projects. While the 4-year-old may be awkward with writing, the 5-year-old enjoys handcrafts and small motor tools. As their muscles strengthen, 5- and 6-year-olds change their pencil grip and enjoy copying letters, numbers, words, and sentences. I can recall a 4-year-old starting kindergarten who refused to write his name with or without support. He was angry and explosive as he communicated to me that he just wasn't ready. In contrast, many 5- and 6-year-olds like to draw, paint, color, and write. While 4-year-olds are able to sit still for only short periods of time, 5-year-olds can pace themselves. 6-year-olds' bodies are growing rapidly. They can tire easily, and they get ill often. While 4-year-olds focus on faraway objects, 5- and 6-year-olds see close objects best. While 5-year-olds tend to read one word at a time, 6-year-olds experience maturing of their eyes, and reading becomes easier as they track words from left to right. My son, with an August 26th birthday, would have begun kindergarten within the guidelines under the new eligibility law at 5 years and 1 week of age. But it would not have been the best fit for him. Having had experience teaching kindergarten before his birth, I wondered if he would be ready to start kindergarten only a few days past his 5th birthday. Learning about my learner was both valuable and informative. Based on his use of language, his social maturity, and his need for physical adventures, I selected to give him the gift of time. As the needs within my classroom community come into focus each September, specific needs are met with accessible support systems. Younger students often lack the physical strength in their fine motor muscles and require support for things like opening food containers, unzipping backpacks, and removing papers from folders. Younger students also typically require support to complete academic tasks such as writing and drawing pictures. Some younger students lack the ability to regulate their emotions and require support to persevere through difficult tasks. Younger students sometimes qualify for special education support within the school setting. Overall, younger learners seem to encounter more difficulties due to the pace and expected outcomes of a typical Connecticut kindergarten program. Based on the new guidelines, most students in my kindergarten class will be 5 years old by September 1st, 2024. If the class presents itself with a more unified set of developmental characteristics, then we can spend our time and energy making gains instead of supporting younger students. This will be the first year to reflect the age-based changes in kindergarten classrooms across Connecticut. I expect the students entering kindergarten in the 24-25 school year to demonstrate the physical maturity required to maintain an appropriate pace and consistent momentum to achieve meaningful gains.
How did the difference in physical abilities impact the curriculum? Also, what requirements have changed in the past few years?
When students in my classroom demonstrated vastly different developmental characteristics, it resulted in conflicts between learners and inconsistencies in pace and learning outcomes. One year, my class was made up of nearly half of the students having birthdays in the last third of the year, from September to December. I quickly adjusted the activities within the curriculum to suit the needs of the students. This meant more play-based learning, and the unexpected outcome was that I learned a lot about play-based learning. When there were many students who needed more support than I could physically deliver, I implemented a buddy system. Older students, kids who were 5 or 6, were paired with younger kids to accomplish simple tasks like getting ready for lunch and recess, hanging backpacks, and opening food containers. Again, I learned the value in using purposefully paired learning teams to deepen vocabulary, solve problems, and improve both social and academic skills. I invited the superintendent to visit our learning community that spring to fully appreciate the challenges a teacher encounters while implementing a new rigorous curriculum in a setting with play-based learners. I'm hopeful that the visit informed all parties about the needs for small class sizes, developmentally appropriate curriculum, and para-educators in the classroom. Over the past few years, I, along with our state's educators, have seen many changes. Based on research, the science of reading has led to several changes in curriculum. The science of reading can be described as the converging body of evidence illustrating what works in literacy instruction. The key components are phonological awareness, phonics and word recognition, fluency, vocabulary and oral language comprehension, and text comprehension. New curriculum warrants the need for a more rigorous pace to achieve expected outcomes. Some mini lessons and activities, as they're written in the curriculum guides, require students to sit still for 10 to 15 minutes. When different subject mini lessons are combined, it can accumulate to over an hour of Tier 1 instruction. Benchmark assessments are another area that has steadily increased since the start of my career. In 2010, my daughter attended a public kindergarten program with only a few benchmark assessments. While she was a reader at that time, she did not participate in a formal reading assessment. In contrast, current kindergarteners participate in nationally normed, skills-based benchmark assessments and progress monitoring 3 or more times within a school year. Most assessments are administered one-on-one in kindergarten and require time, space, and a moderately quiet environment. Students can qualify for support based on data. The new eligibility law can partner with parents to help them make the best decision for their kindergartner. In closing, I thank you for the opportunity to comment on this topic. I'm grateful to provide and promote learning environments that trust learners to leverage resources, activate curriculum in developmentally appropriate ways, and make purposeful gains.
Wow, I hope you have learned as much as I have today. My guests have made some excellent points. I have given more than simply a parent's perspective today so that you can be an informed parent. Just as we need to consider the information available when we vote, we also need to be an informed parent from all aspects of this process we call education. It begins with the state level that is focused on establishing standards to govern our nation. Nationally, our state reviews the policies and test scores from across the entire nation. It is not only in the interest of being competitive, but also in presenting a fair field to compare our achievements. The result was Public Act 23-208, Section 1A, which changed the cutoff date to September 1. The state's perspective on their level is a small step, followed by the administration's efforts to implement the laws that they have set forth. The administrative perspective is focused on results not only in their schools, but within the individual town as compared to the rest of the towns within their county and in their state. Their step is important in evaluating our needs. The third perspective is that of a teacher, and there are many who spend the day with our children on a level that we are not always present to observe. The teacher has not just one student's interest during a very packed day of instruction, but that of up to 28 other students who are trying their best to meet his or her expectations. Who helps them when they struggle? The teachers help them, but also they help students to help each other, as communities have learned to do. Lastly, the perspective on the parents' level. It is my belief that these perspectives were important when it came to my child. Their input helped me to determine what was best for our situation. My advice is to listen to all parties and take their input into consideration when making the decision of how to proceed. I believe it takes a village to raise a child, and an informed parent to carry out those caring decisions that we make. Good luck on your journey. Thanks for watching.